So we're going to talk about Samson today. I know everybody's heard the story of Samson and Delilah, but I'm going to give a little bit of the way I feel about Samson and Delilah. We know that Samson's mother was barren, which means she can't conceive a child. And prior to Samson's mother, there was only one other occasion that I found that a woman was unable to conceive and God allowed her to conceive and have a son. That was Sarah. And if you look in Genesis chapter 17 verse 19, it says, God said, Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, which was God confirming to Abraham that she was going to have a child even though she was 90 years old. So in the same way he done Samson's mother. Now if you go to Judges chapter 13 verse 3, it's basically the same thing. It says, and an angel of the Lord appeared unto the woman and said unto her, behold, now thou art barren, and bearest not, but thou shalt conceive and bear a son. Which was an angel of God explaining to her that she would conceive Samson. Now, the name Samson in Hebrew means Shemish, which means the son, which is also the name of God. If you turn to Psalms 84 and 11, it says, for the Lord God is a sun and a shield. So that means, to me, that's where Samson got his strength from, because he was godlike. So over the years, Samson grows up, gets stronger, eventually finds a young woman, and they get married. She's from Philistine, which is the people who are in control of the Israelites at the time. So, as with most cases, the Philistines have been for years trying to find why Samson has such strength and what the secret to his strength is. So she had asked a couple of times, and he gives her riddles, and then eventually he answers a riddle, and she tells the Philistines, and therefore they go on. So Samson eventually found out that she had done that, and he left her. And over a period of time, her father gives her to his best friend or one of his companions. And Samson moves on. So some time goes by, and like I said, the Philistines have been trying to find out the source of his strength. So Samson eventually finds love in another woman, which was Delilah. And Delilah in Hebrew, it means night, or Layla, which is the meaning of Layla is consumes the day. So here you have Samson, who is the sun, and Delilah, who is the night. So you've got the dark trying to cover the light.
Amen.
Eventually, she does have her way, and she continuously goes after him, and she finds, after several times, she finds out that his hair is his strength. And she's already been approached by some of the Philistine people for her to find out what his secret was. And they offered her 1,100 pieces of silver when she found out what it was. So she calls them up and gets them on their way, and while they're headed that way, she cuts Samson's hair. Samson doesn't know that that's what she's doing because he's asleep. And so when the Philistines get there, she wakes Samson up and tells him that they're there, and he gets up basically ready to fight them, to get them out. But he's overcame and he can't beat them. And he realizes his hair's been cut. So at that point, Samson has lost his faith, because in Samson's eyes, the way I feel about it, his hair was his strength. Not the fact that God was his strength, it was his hair was his strength. And
That's good. That's good.
even though he realized his hair had been cut, he didn't have the faith anymore that he needed to use his strength with to overcome the Philistines. So they basically took Samson as a prisoner, and they poked his eyes out or gouged his eyes out to where he was blind. Then they took him to the prison and they put him in a grind room, and he basically, was a slave to the Philistines for a while. So after a while, maybe a few years, they decided they wanted to have a little fun with Samson. So they called him down to their gathering house or something. I guess it'd be like a coliseum or small building where they can house 3,000 or 4,000 people. It states that they had roughly 3,000 men and women in the house at the time, and Samson asked the soldier to allow him to rest, so they tied him up between two pillars. Well, the soldier wasn't aware that the two pillars were basically the support structure of the house or the building that they were in. So over time, they're in there and they're teasing Samson and, getting him riled up. And Samson begins to regain his faith. The whole time he doesn't know that the time that he's been in prison, his hair was growing back because he's blind. He doesn't have the eyes. So he begins to build his faith up. He's praying to God, asking God to just allow him one more opportunity to bring the house down on all the Philistines that were in there and sacrifice himself to wipe them out. And so God gives him the strength to actually be able to do that. So he begins to push and pull against the pillars or the columns in the building, and eventually the building begins to fall. It falls in and it kills Samson, and it kills the bulk of the people that were in there. If you look at 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7, it says, "For we walk by faith, not by sight." At that point, Samson was having to walk by faith because he couldn't see. He didn't know, he couldn't see that his hair had grown back, and all he could do was go with the faith that God gave him, that he grew back from. So basically, in that little bit about Samson, the way I've come to believe it is, if you walk by faith and not by sight, if you close your eyes and think about it, and you ever had a calling or a dream of something you wanted to do, like being a teacher or a nurse or whatever it might have been, it's like Samson's hair getting cut off. It'll come back, but you have to have faith when it comes back, and you have to pursue it. So no matter what your dream was or your calling for God was, if you have that faith, it will come back. No matter how long it takes, it'll come back. And the way I just feel like it's when things aren't it going exactly how you want it. If you just remember the story of Samson, you know, he had his sight and he lost his faith in God because, to the way I feel about it, his faith was in his hair. He believed that as long as he had long hair, he was unbeaten. And then he awoke that one day, his hair was gone, and he didn't know it, and they got him. They beat him. So then they gouged his eyes out, and he no longer had sight, so he had to start learning to live by faith. And if you learn to live by faith, the whole point of it is that your calling or your dreams will come back. You just have to have the faith.
Amen. Don't worry.
I like it.
Oh.